Hello, my art-loving friends. I can never resist a good calendar, and we have a fun one to review today. This is the 12-month watercolor calendar for the year 2025 from Grabie, and we'll take a brief look at this watercolor set as well. So Grabie asked me if I wanted to review some of their products, and I looked at the offerings and said yes to the calendar, but they were like, but we really want to send you our watercolors. And I was like, well, the last time I reviewed Grabie Watercolors, it was not a favorable review. So I really didn't think they would want to send me their watercolors again, but they were very excited about this set, and they did want to send them to me regardless of my last review, which I think says a lot about them. They're proud of their product, and I respect that. So we will take a look at that. It's a whole kit though, so it actually has some pretty neat stuff in it, which I am excited to show you. This watercolor calendar is 100% cotton paper. It is 140 pounds. And it should be quite delightful to work on based on that. It does have a smooth texture, however, so it is more like a hot press paper. And it comes with this little holder here, which you put together like that. And then it holds your pages like that. These are all individual sheets, so it's super easy if you want to tape them down or whatever to paint your designs on. I really like that feature. You can bind it later if you want to, but it's not necessary because of the holder it comes with. This watercolor set probably did come wrapped in plastic, but I took it apart long ago. I've actually had this a while. You can see it's pretty tightly packed in here. You have the watercolor set, brushes, and watercolor paper, which are the things I'm excited to show you about. Plus, there's some things in the watercolor set itself that are kind of fun. Here we are. I showed this watercolor set to my youngest son, and he said, wow, that's a really cool looking tin, and I agree. And then I opened it, and he goes, oh my goodness, that is a lot of colors, which I also agree with. They want this set to be out there for beginners. However, in my opinion, it's very overwhelming to have this many colors. On the other hand, there are a lot of fun things in here. So there are 84 regular colors of watercolor in here, plus 48 metallic watercolors. The metallics go from this corner here, clear down to this corner here, and then there are 24 macaron colors, which are somewhere in this region right here. And basically macaron, in my opinion, just means they have white added to them, so they're pastel, which is really cool. And then there are some neon colors here as well. They consider these down here the 12 fluorescent colors. So not only do you get a bucket full of watercolors and a beautiful tin, you get 100% cotton watercolor paper. This is not just paper though, it is actually a coloring book that is 100% cotton, and it's 140 pounds as well. So after opening the plastic, we get this fun coloring book. And it's kind of neat because the printing on this is not a black, so it may disappear under certain colors. We'll play with it and find out. However, it is also a smooth texture, so it is more of a hot press watercolor paper. But that was a mushroom, this is a bird, a flower, some more fruit basically here, more flowers. I about said more flowers here, and then I saw the fruit, so, you know, slip of English. Another bird, fox, palm trees, little sailboat and sunset scene. That could be fun. I probably will do that one. I tend to like landscapes. Okay, just a doodle scene. I like that. Some Christmas ornaments. And that is the end of that. Very nice. In this box here are some brushes, etc. They call this the watercolor toolkit. And we have 3 water brushes, a flat, and 2 rounds. Kind of interesting that this little one is shorter. It looks like the same diameter as the larger one, which is kind of handy because if you needed a shorter one to go in one of your travel kits, you could use that one. So not a bad thing. And yeah, flat brush, pencil sharpener, metal, pencil, HB, and a little sponge. There's also instructions on how to use a water brush pen, which is kind of nice because They're assuming you're a complete beginner. Instructions might be handy. In the box was also this very large swatch sheet. This will take a long time to swatch all of these watercolors, so I'm not going to make you sit through that, but I will do that because it's important for me to see what these colors look like and how they feel. I don't know if you noticed at the beginning when I opened this tin of watercolors, but I did take out this protective sheet, which is great because if you get these wet and you have to shut it and leave, you'll just put that back in between them and shut it and they won't bleed into each other. And it also has a finger hole so you can take that out pretty easily. I was not wrong. That took a little over an hour to swatch all of these, but look at the colors and they activated really easily. And I was thinking as I swatched a few of these colors, like the dark chocolate, this carob, this moss, the cedar brown, the garnet. I was like, geez, I wonder if these are light fast because it would be super nice to add some of these, that one, to my main palette. Anyway, I may have to do some light fast testing. And then for the metallics, they're very nice. They activated extremely quickly. I did not pre-wet them and they put out a good payload of paint, so it'll be fun to try those. I have a fun painting we're going to do on one of the calendar pages that will use some of the metallic colors here. Also, after swatching all 168 watercolors, the water is actually not that dirty, so take that for what you will. And I wanted to start out trying out these calendar pages because they are one of the things I was the most excited about, and of course I could have used my own paints for this, but I did want to try out these paints and they seemed fine for this application. They reactivate really easily. The first thing I noticed though is because I always take my paint out of the palette, even if I'm not mixing it, I kind of swish it around onto some mixing space to know how much I have in my brush, and there was no mixing space. However, the saving grace of this palette is that clear protector sheet they put in between, and you can use that for basically a mixing palette or a swish palette if you want to call it that. So thank goodness, because otherwise you would need something extra to carry with you in order to use this palette, because you inevitably need to know how much paint you have on your brush or you will be mixing colors. Even with 168 colors, I did mix colors a couple of times. And I was using my own brushes here that I had in my drawer. I will use the water brushes later. And this is actually the P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White that I'm using here because I did try the white in this set. This white is not opaque. It's probably just for more mixing pastel-like colors because it hardly even showed up on the paper. So a good mixing white, but a bad opaque white. So definitely will need an additional white if you want to do that. And I didn't feel like I was done testing these calendar pages, so I got out February as well. And I just wanted to try some negative painting, and all I could think of for February was Valentine's Day, which is fun because hearts are always pretty. So we're just doing some negative painting, and I'm really only using the one color here. I actually kind of used the lighter red, but this one I think is the red. And when you're doing negative painting, it can take a really long time. That's why I have the heat gun out. So if you have a heat gun or a hairdryer, you can use that to dry your layers in between, and it doesn't take nearly as long. We did this in my class the other day, and the drying time, because we didn't have any heat guns or hairdryers, was significant. So don't do this exercise if you're in a hurry unless you have some way to dry your layers in between, because that didn't take very long at all to dry the layers. So with negative painting, you just draw one layer of shapes and then you paint around them, and then you draw another layer of the same shapes and you paint around all the shapes, and then you draw a third and fourth layer. Sometimes you can do a fourth layer. The paint was pretty well saturated after the 3 layers here, so I left it at that. But with some paint and some paper, you can do more layers. This is a hot press paper and it doesn't take as many layers as a cold press paper might. Plus the paints might have a play in that, I'm not sure. These paints didn't seem much different when I was doing this with my Himimiya paints the other day in class, but Himimiya is also a student grade paint. And I probably should have done the first layer of hearts a little bit smaller to get more layers in there or to show more of the layers, but that's okay. I decided to go ahead and take my black fine liner and outline the hearts and outline a box around the edges. And of course, the most fun part is when you can take the tape off and see what you have left. It's quite pretty. I think I like it a lot. And you can see the different layers here and how the paint actually looks quite nice on this hot press paper. So I decided to do the same thing with the January page, make that black border, and then I took my Micron 02 and just kind of put in some lines and some definition. And considering the mess that this looked like in the very beginning when I was just throwing down color, I think it turned out really nicely. It definitely looks like a winter river. My son said, "Ooh, that looks cold." I was like, well, that's the point, so I guess I did my job. But here we go with the fun tape peel so you can see your results. There we are. There are both of them together. This is a fun calendar. If you're used to hot press paper, or even if you're not, I challenge you to try it if you like calendars, because it's a great way to get some original artwork on here and enjoy it throughout the entire year. Now it is time to try the coloring book, and I wanted to try the water brushes that came with this set, because if you just buy this set, you will get this coloring book, you will get these water brushes, and this paint set. So let's use just the supplies that came in there. Of course, I added the rag on the side, which you are going to need if you're going to use water brushes, unless you want to use your jeans or shirt to soak up the water and the paint when you're changing colors. Not the best idea, but it does work if you're desperate. So the water brushes seemed really great at first. I had no problem with them until probably halfway, well, I would say a third of the way through this painting. For some reason, I was having trouble keeping them wet. It was like I would squeeze water out and I wouldn't even be over the paint. So I would squeeze the water out expecting the water to stay in, but when I let go of the squeeze, the water would all pull back in from the brush and make it feel very dry. I would actually say that didn't happen till more like halfway through this painting. So if you have a little extra dish of water, that will help, because you need to keep those bristles wet. They cannot paint properly if they are dry. So it really surprised me how much the water pulled back in and totally dried the bristles out. So be aware of that. I always say, even if you're using a water brush, if you have an opportunity to have an extra pot of water, use it. Because even if your water brush is really good, and these felt really good at first, you're still better off if you can dip your brush in a regular pot of water. It's going to save you time, energy, effort, and you won't risk pulling the paint and water back into the water brush. So that's the other thing. If you do this, squeeze the water brush out over your paint when you're like mixing it in your paint to get paint on your brush, and you let go of the water brush, you unsqueeze it over your paint, it will pull that paint color into the barrel of the water brush. This will happen with almost any water brush, although I do have better luck with the Pentel brand than some others, but it will happen with any water brush if you're not careful. So having that extra water, if you can, I often can't. When I use a water brush, it's because I need to use a water brush because I don't have the opportunity to have extra water in a pot with me. But these shapes and sizes are really good. These are the shapes and sizes that I would pick for a kit like this, so they did really good with that. When I finished painting this, I was debating background because I had not tried the flat brush yet and I wanted to try it, but I didn't want to do a full background, so I thought kind of like a silhouette background, or what do you call that, vignette background, would be best, where I kind of put some color in and then just kind of let it fade out. So I did blue up at the top and then a brown mixture down at the bottom. It was actually a brown peach pastel mixture, which I really liked. It did dry a lot lighter, however, so I may go back and darken some shadows later. But there it is. I think this kit is actually really cool. The calendar, especially if you don't mind hot press paper. Actually, the coloring book's really awesome too. I want to try it with some other paint here in the future. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope showing you this Grabie kit gave you some information. I agree with my beginning statement that it's a lot of colors, but I was trying to think of when I was little, would I care that there were so many colors, or would I be excited that there were so many colors? I cannot figure out what my answer would be. So do you guys know? Would you be excited if you were little that there were this many colors, or would you be intimidated? All right, guys, if you want this kit, I'll link it down below, or the calendar set is really nice, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye for now.